When you flip the power, the narcissist will crawl for your attention until their final breath. All right, let's slow down and tell this like it really feels. Imagine this. The very person who once drained your spirit, twisted your reality, and made you doubt your own worth, the same one who seemed untouchable, powerful, and in control, could one day find themselves drawn to you, chasing the very attention they once took for granted. Sounds impossible, right? But with narcissists, there's one shift so powerful it can flip the entire dynamic. Not because you're trying to get revenge, but because you finally understand the psychology behind their need for dominance. And once you truly understand that, everything changes, not just the relationship, but your sense of power within it. See, narcissists feed on what psychologists call narcissistic supply. Attention, admiration, emotional reactions, chaos, defensiveness, confusion. To them, it doesn't matter if you're loving them, fighting them, apologizing, or crying. If your energy is focused on them, they feel important. They feel alive. Your reactions are their oxygen. And as long as you're responding, whether with love or anger, you're keeping them fed. But the moment you stop responding the way they expect, the moment you step back, detach, and refuse to be emotionally triggered, something extraordinary happens. It's like pulling the plug on their internal power source. Suddenly, the role they played so confidently, controller, manipulator, puppet master, begins to crack. They feel irrelevant. They lose their footing. And for the first time, you become the unpredictable one. But make no mistake, this isn't easy. Narcissists don't give up control quietly. They'll poke at your wounds, flatter you, guilt trip you, or even pretend to change just to pull you back into emotional engagement. One day they may act cold and cruel, and the next they'll appear soft, apologetic, nostalgic. Every move is calculated. Every gesture is designed to make you feel unstable enough to react. And that's why consistency becomes your greatest weapon. You don't argue. You don't explain. You don't defend yourself or try to make them understand. You stay steady, grounded, emotionally neutral. The more they push for reaction, the more you detach. Over time, your silence becomes louder than any argument you ever had. Then something surprising happens. Instead of walking away, many narcissists become even more determined. Your emotional distance becomes a challenge, and narcissists are obsessed with anything they can't immediately control. They begin shifting, adapting, bending, not because they care, but because they crave the power they once held over you. Suddenly, they follow your tone. They wait for your responses. They watch your behavior instead of dictating it. The dynamic reverses. But here's the truth you must hold on to. Power over a narcissist isn't maintained by dominance, it's maintained by boundaries. Clear, unwavering, unapologetic boundaries. Because narcissists don't respect limits, they test them. They push them. They look for weakness, hesitation, emotional vulnerability, any doorway back into your mind. If your boundaries shake, even once, they'll bulldoze right through. So when you say, "I'm not discussing this," or "that doesn't work for me," you say it calmly and without explanation. You don't negotiate. You don't justify. You don't perform emotional labor to make the boundary feel softer or more acceptable. You simply enforce it and walk away if it's violated. Sometimes it feels cold, sometimes it feels unnatural, but with a narcissist, it's survival. It's the only language they recognize. And over time, something remarkable happens. Not to them, but to you. You stop reacting. You stop absorbing their chaos. You stop feeling small. You stop believing you need to earn peace. You realize they never held real power. You just never stopped giving it to them. This journey isn't about making a narcissist chase you. It's about remembering that you were never meant to be controlled in the first place. And the moment you withdraw what feeds them, the moment you choose your boundaries, your dignity, your emotional stillness, they begin to shrink. And you finally begin to rise. When you finally stop reacting the way they expect, when their guilt trips, gaslighting, and emotional traps fall flat, something begins to change. There's a moment when they realize you're no longer predictable, no longer bendable. no longer the person they could emotionally command with a glance or a tone. And that realization unsettles them. It takes away their familiar sense of power. They might push harder at first, raise their voice, suddenly become incredibly kind, or twist your words in ways meant to destabilize you. But if you stay steady and consistent, if you stop responding with emotion and start responding with clarity, they begin to adjust. Not because they've grown, not because they suddenly respect you, but because you've become someone they can no longer easily manipulate. This isn't about punishing them. It's about protecting your peace, about building a boundary so solid it cannot be negotiated, weakened, or emotionally dismantled. And something ironic happens when you hold that line. Some narcissists become drawn to the strength they once tried to destroy. Boundaries feel foreign to them, yet they crave the structure because deep down, chaos is all they know. They may stay in your life, not because they hold the power, but because now your rules have become the foundation of the dynamic. At this point, the gray rock method becomes one of the strongest tools you have. It works because it directly targets the one thing a narcissist feeds on: your emotional reactions. They thrive on intensity, anger, tears, excitement, confusion, arguments, explanations. Every reaction tells them they matter, that they influence your emotional reality. But when you become calm, flat, boring, when you respond with neutral words instead of emotional energy, it strips away their supply. You become like a dull stone, uninteresting, unresponsive, emotionally unreachable. At first, they'll fight it. They'll poke at your insecurities, bait you with insults, or pull you close with sweet words they never meant. They may create conflict or sudden affection just to see if they can make you crack. But if you remain steady, if you answer with short, neutral responses like, "Okay, I understand," or "That's your perspective," while refusing to defend, justify, or explain, they begin to lose control. The beauty of this method is its subtlety. You're not confronting them. You're not announcing your boundaries or lecturing them about respect. You're simply withdrawing the one thing they cannot function without: emotional fuel. They often don't even realize what's happening at first. They'll assume you're tired or distant. But when this calm detachment becomes your new normal, they are forced to respond differently. Some will leave in search of a new emotional host. Others, especially in long-term relationships, will shift, adjust, soften, or attempt to regain access by behaving differently. Whether they stay or go, one truth remains: you're no longer dancing to their rhythm. There's another strategy, more subtle, more psychological: mirroring. Narcissists expect you to carry the emotional weight of every interaction, to chase when they withdraw, to soften when they become cold, to over-explain when they become unclear. But when you mirror their behavior calmly, without cruelty, without theatrics, they suddenly feel the discomfort they've spent so long inflicting. When they give silence, you give silence. When they dismiss your words, you respond with the same calm detachment. When they act superior, you offer no reaction that confirms their importance. It isn't about becoming them, it's about returning their behavior like a reflection they cannot escape. Suddenly, for the first time, they are forced to sit with the emotional emptiness they created. And in that space where your reactions once fueled the chaos, there is only quiet. And in that quiet, something powerful happens. You are no longer controlled. You are no longer predictable. You are no longer emotionally available on command. The noise that once consumed you fades, and instead, there is clarity, strength, and self-respect. The power dynamic shifts, not because you fought them, but because you stopped feeding the illusion that they ever had power over you at all. When they make everything about themselves, you don't push back. You simply shift the focus back to you, calmly, as if their attempt at dominance never existed. It unsettles them because they're used to setting the emotional tone, dictating the conversation, and holding center stage. But when they hear their own coldness echoed back through your tone, their own emotional distance mirrored with steady neutrality, something inside them falters. They're not prepared to face themselves, especially in a form they cannot manipulate. What makes this approach so powerful is the truth beneath their facade. Narcissists are fragile in ways they will never admit. Their confidence is armor, not identity. So when you reflect their behavior without anger, sarcasm, or emotional reaction, they feel exposed. Something in them senses that the usual tactics aren't working. You become an unfamiliar version of yourself, calm, untouchable, unreadable, and that threatens the foundation of their control. Confusion starts first, irritation follows, and eventually something shifts, sometimes subtly, sometimes dramatically. They may soften their tone, adjust their behavior, or even attempt to win back your approval without fully understanding why. It's like psychological judo. You use their energy against them, silently and without force. But this only works when you remain emotionally centered. The moment you slip, showing anger, sarcasm, or frustration, the spell breaks and they regain their footing. But when you stay consistent, steady voice, calm posture, neutral words, the dynamic changes. You're no longer reacting to them. They find themselves reacting to you. And in that moment, they begin to watch you more closely, as if you are suddenly the unpredictable force in the room. This isn't revenge. It's leverage. It's the quiet reclaiming of emotional territory they once believed belonged entirely to them. And then something deeper happens when you reinforce conditional attention. Instead of giving them admiration, interest, and validation freely, as if it were their entitlement, you make it something they must earn. They don't get warmth when they belittle you. They don't get conversation when they disrespect you. They don't get connection when they manipulate. Instead, they are met with stillness, silence, or disinterest. No scene, no confrontation, just a closed emotional door. But when they are calm, respectful, or aligned with your boundaries, you allow access. A soft tone, a small smile, a response that feels engaged. Over time, this creates a psychological blueprint. Respect equals connection, manipulation equals emptiness. At first, they will resist, escalate, guilt trip, provoke, because nothing confuses a narcissist more than losing the guaranteed emotional supply they counted on. But consistency turns confusion into adaptation. They begin to change, not because they're healing, not because they suddenly value your feelings, but because they want the thing only you can give: emotional validation. This shift places you in a position they never expected. You become the one who decides when connection happens and when it doesn't. Your presence becomes rare, valuable, and powerful. And without fully understanding why, they begin to chase you. Because now your attention is no longer automatic, it is earned. And in that subtle but profound reversal, the spell of control they once cast over you dissolves. You're no longer their emotional supply. You have become the one they seek, the one they cannot predict, the one they cannot command. And that changes everything. Conditional attention is not cruelty, nor is it punishment. It is a quiet shift in power, subtle but undeniable. Instead of reacting to every provocation, every manipulation, every emotional storm they stir, you begin responding with intention. You stop giving your energy away freely like something ordinary. Instead, you treat it as something sacred, something that must be earned. And without ever announcing it, you teach them a truth they have never had to face. Access to you is no longer guaranteed. At first, they don't notice the shift. They continue demanding, assuming, taking. But slowly, almost imperceptibly, they begin to feel the difference. Your attention no longer rushes toward them. Your emotional responses no longer explode or collapse on command. The more you hold back, not from malice, but from wisdom, the more they feel the imbalance tilt away from them. And that realization unnerves them. For perhaps the first time, they have to work for something they once controlled effortlessly. They begin to adjust not out of love, not yet, but out of need. Because narcissists do not want to give, they want to receive. And you've changed the terms of how they get what they crave. This is where emotional detachment becomes your quiet armor. Narcissists feed off emotion, any emotion. Love, rage, fear, confusion, it doesn't matter. As long as they remain the center of your emotional gravity, they feel powerful. But when you detach, when you stop rewarding chaos with emotional response, something inside the dynamic snaps. They can no longer steer your mind, bend your behavior, or dictate what you feel. You become still, observing, unaffected, and it disarms them in a way nothing else does. Detachment doesn't mean you become numb, cold, or robotic. It means you learn to separate what they say from who you are. You no longer internalize their accusations, their moods, their shifting versions of affection and cruelty. You begin to see their behavior clearly, not as truth, but as a tactic. And instead of reacting instinctively, you pause. You breathe. You decide. This is the moment when their power drains, not with a shout, but with silence. The more detached you become, the clearer everything feels. You stop seeking their approval because you realize their validation was never real. It was always a leash. You stop trying to explain yourself, convince them, or win their understanding. You accept what they are, and in doing so, you stop needing anything from them. And that shift, the quiet withdrawal of your emotional investment, is something they cannot control. Some will react with anger, desperation, or theatrics, trying to pull you back into the emotional battlefield where they win. Others will soften, try harder, attempt to imitate kindness, not because they've changed, but because control now requires effort. Either way, the dynamic is no longer the same. You are no longer the emotional supply. You are the standard, the gatekeeper, the one who decides when and how your energy is given. With detachment comes clarity. With clarity comes boundaries, and with boundaries comes strength. You find yourself walking away from arguments because they no longer matter. You hear manipulation and feel nothing. You say no and you mean it not with defensiveness, but with calm certainty. That calmness is power. That stillness is leverage. And that emotional autonomy is something narcissists cannot predict, cannot manipulate, and cannot break. Detachment is not an overnight transformation. It takes time, awareness, and a deep commitment to valuing your peace more than their approval. But when it finally settles within you, everything shifts. Their words lose weight. Their reactions lose meaning. Their chaos loses influence. And slowly, inevitably, they begin to adjust, not because they've become better people, but because they now recognize something they never expected to encounter from you: limits. You are no longer fueled by their validation. You are no longer controlled by their moods. You are no longer their emotional hostage. You have reclaimed yourself. And in that quiet reclaiming, the entire relationship dynamic rewrites itself, not with aggression, but with undeniable power.